Hi everyone, Mark Montgomery here with Great College Advice, and today we're going to talk about letters of recommendation and how you can get great ones to support your college application. So let's dive in. There is no doubt that the letters of recommendation are a super duper important element of the college application. These recommendations are reinforcing the academic picture of the student on that application. So it is one of the three academic pieces, right? We have grades and GPA, we have the test scores, and we have the letters of recommendation, especially those written by teachers. The recommendations are also important because they help give a three-dimensional picture of the student beyond the data of test scores and GPA. They actually make the student a living, breathing human being in the eyes of the person who is writing that recommendation. So it really brings the person, the applicant, to life. The other thing that's important is that the letters of recommendation represent someone else's view of the student, right? They are a window onto the student through another person's eyes. The essay, by contrast, is the opportunity for the student to present his or her own vision of himself and to share priorities, values, perspectives through that essay. This is an important balance to that. Not all colleges actually even want letters of recommendation. The University of California, for example, doesn't even care. They don't need them. So you may be applying to schools that don't require them. However, many schools do, and for the purposes of this video, we're going to focus on those schools, obviously, that do want recommendations. We're also going to assume, for the purposes of the video, that you are applying to relatively selective colleges and universities. These are the universities that really stress the value of the letter of recommendation. Who should write your letters of recommendation? Well, the general rule is you're going to have one letter of recommendation from your school counselor, or from the head of school, or from the postgraduate advisor. Somebody is going to be responsible at your secondary school for writing the letter of recommendation on behalf of the institution. And we'll come to that in a moment. Then you will have letters of recommendation from generally two teachers. Sometimes it might only be one, sometimes you might bring three, as we'll talk in a minute, but the general rule is two. You want these recommendations to come from your teachers in academic core subjects. What's the core? English, math, social studies, science, and foreign language. The rest of it, not really that important, because we're focusing on you as a hardcore student because you are applying to a college, not to a vacation spa, right? So you want to focus on those 5 core subjects. Preferably, your teacher will come from the 11th grade. Not the 10th grade, not the 12th grade. Although sometimes you might have a teacher who writes your recommendation from the 10th grade, and sometimes even from the 12th grade. There's no hard and fast rule. You want to make sure that the teacher knows you, understands you, likes you, and respects you, and finds you to be a good all-around student, so that they will be happy to write a positive recommendation on your behalf. Generally, we want the 11th grade because the 11th grade is the sort of the ultimate year of high school on which you are judged going into college. So junior year is best, but sometimes 10th grade, sometimes 11th. As you're thinking about whom to ask, you can think about what is your potential major. For example, if you're thinking you want to go into the STEM fields, then perhaps you want 2 recommendations from maybe a math teacher, maybe a science teacher. And then you don't have to worry about those other things because you're not planning to study those things. However, if your plan is that you are absolutely going to focus in on the humanities, then it might be okay for you to have more than one humanities teacher doing your recommendations. However, for the most selective schools like the Ivies, and for anyone who is not exactly sure about what they're going to major in when they get to college, you should err on the side of breadth. you should have a recommendation perhaps from a math and science teacher on one side of the house, and perhaps from a English, social studies, or foreign language teacher on the other side of the house. This way you present yourself as a solid all-around student who can do everything. And that is generally what the top universities want, because they know most of the students coming into their colleges will change their majors at least once. So they want people who can handle just about anything that might be thrown at them in the classroom. Some colleges and universities, or particular programs at these universities, will require that you have recommendations from certain kinds of teachers. So you want to make sure that if you're applying to a particular program, engineering, computer science, arts, fine arts, etc., that you have the recommendations that are required for that particular program. So dig deep, make sure you're doing the research to know that certain kinds of recommendations may be required for certain programs. Occasionally, students will decide to send in a third recommendation. A recommendation of this type should be something that presents something new or interesting or different about you that we didn't get from those two other teacher recommendations. So, for example, if you had a job during high school and you had a supervisor all through high school who knows you well, who knows how responsible you are, who knows that you can handle money, who trusts you entirely to help run his or her business, well, that supervisor could be an excellent recommendation letter for you. Similarly, if you're active in your church or other place of worship, perhaps a spiritual leader could be very helpful in rounding out the picture of who you are as a person. That person needs to know who you are and really have a lot of contact with you, but if they do, that'd be terrific. If you are in scouting, maybe your scout leader could be a great recommendation letter. Or if you're interested in the arts and that's one of your strongest extracurricular pursuits, that teacher in theater or drama or studio art could be a fantastic addition to your portfolio. Or a coach, especially if you are trying to be a recruited athlete, that might be an excellent addition to your application. So how should you think about getting great letters of recommendation? Well, one of the ways to do that is to kind of put yourself in the shoes of a teacher and to see the world from their perspective and to understand what they think good students really are. So, first of all, you have to remind yourself that teachers know a lot about you. They see you in a lot of contexts. They see you every single day, when you're in a good mood, when you're in a bad mood, when you're well prepared, when you're not so well prepared, when you're rocking it, and when you're not. So I think of teachers like Santa Claus. Yeah, that fat guy with the red suit. Santa Claus knows when you're naughty and nice. He knows when you're good and bad. So be good for goodness sake, because you are in that class every day, and the teacher really knows a lot about you. They have also access to other information about you don't even know they know. So pay attention to them. Be nice to them and recognize that they have a lot of information on you. They also see how you behave in school every day. They notice whether you're asking questions. They know if you're prepared and read the books and not just the spark notes. They know if your contributions to discussion are actually incisive or completely annoying. They also recognize when you go above and beyond the work that they require. It's so cool to be a teacher and a student comes in and says, well, I know we read this book in class, but last night I pulled off another book by the same author and I started reading it. Oh my gosh, did you know what they have to say in this book? Oh, that's awesome. Teachers love that stuff because it shows curiosity, interest in the subject. And you're sharing that enthusiasm with the teacher. That is what teachers love. They eat that up, right? They love to see illustrations of your fortitude, of your devotion, of your dedication to the subject and to the business of being a student. They recognize when you've shown up before school, when you've stayed after school to get some more help, when you've asked questions, when you're just shooting the breeze with the teacher and talking to them about your extracurriculars and about what's going on at home. They like that. And the more that you do that and you share that kind of stuff with them, the more they have to share when they go to write that letter of recommendation. So develop relationships with your teachers. I know you can't do it with every teacher because you don't get along with every single teacher that you have, right? But you have a teacher or two at school that you have a good relationship or you feel more comfortable getting to know. Do it. Spend the time. It's worth it because these recommendation letters, I'm telling you, are super important when the admissions people go to read about you. So take the time. Now, you don't want to be an annoying suck-up, a brown-noser, right? You don't want to be that kid. You want to share your genuine enthusiasm for the subject and you want to get to know your teacher, but you don't want to be a sicko. Okay, that is really annoying and the teacher will not want to write your recommendation, and when they do, they're going to mention that you're really annoying. Also, don't be the grade grubber and talk about, all you talk about is grades and whether I have an A- or a B+, or I'm just on the cusp. Can't you just give me a little bit more? Can you just give me some extra credit, please? Because I just need to move from an 89 to 90. That's boring. That's not really what teachers are thinking about because they want to know about your curiosity, your motivation, your interest, your genuine passion and enthusiasm for the subject at hand. Don't be a brown-noser. So much for teachers. How about your counselor? Well, the same is true. Your counselor has the opportunity to add to your application in a very substantive way. So take the time to get to know your counselor. Now, I know in some circumstances it's really hard because counselors are overworked and maybe you have only one meeting with your counselor every year, if that. And sometimes when it comes to college, you might just have one meeting in preparation for college with your counselor and that is it. However, if you know who your counselor is, make it a point to try to get to know that person. Make an appointment to meet them. You can, even if you're not in trouble, right? They are pretty sick of having to deal with kids who are in trouble. They would much rather deal with an interesting young person who is doing positive, interesting things at their school. So go ahead, make an appointment, go meet them. It's totally fine. They want you to. That's why they're doing this job. They like young people. They like to meet you. So do it. If you have a counseling program from freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and you're meeting your counselor on a semi-regular basis in a group-like environment, make sure that you really take advantage of that time. I know some of those programs are kind of lame, kind of boring, but again, getting to know your counselor can help you later on down the road because they have to write something interesting about you, and if they've never laid eyes on you, or even if they have and they've never had any interaction with you, there's not much they can say. Right? So make sure they understand what you're interested in academically. Make sure that they know what you're doing extracurricularly. What kinds of activities are you involved in and out of school? Let them know. Warm up to them. Make it a point. Take them an apple. Take some candy. I don't know. Just be nice, right? Be nice. So the roles of the counselor and the teachers are slightly different on the application. The counselor is going to represent the school and give a more general recommendation about who you are as a citizen of that school, whereas the teacher is going to be more focused on your performance and your behavior in the classroom. This is a more in-depth look at you as a student. So let's look at the counselor recommendation first. The counselor is going to talk about you on three broad categories. They're going to look at you in terms of your academic abilities and performance in the context of all the other students at your school. They're going to be able to put your performance in a context to help the admissions people understand how well are you doing compared to other students at your school. They're also going to be talking about your extracurricular activities and your contributions to the school in that way, and they may have an opportunity to talk about you in terms of your character, your personality, your integrity, all those other personal characteristics that you hope are very positive when Santa Claus comes to town. They're going to write a letter to explore these three things, and they're also going to rate you on a scale. And that scale is below average, average, good, very good, excellent, outstanding, and one of the very best students I have ever met in my entire life. Okay, that doesn't happen very often. Teachers don't check that box very often because they know if they did, nobody would ever believe them. So they don't do it. But if that's you, that's awesome. There is also a box that says no basis. In other words, no basis for even being able to say 2 words about you, because I've never met you, I've never laid eyes on you, I have no idea who you are. And more counselors are checking that box. And that is a shame, because you've missed out on the opportunity to have this person tell a little bit more about you and to give some perspective on who you are as a human being. Don't let that happen to you. Get to know your counselor. Teachers are also going to write a letter that gives some examples of your behavior and your demeanor and your performance in the classroom. But they're also going to have a chance to rate you on 13 different criteria. 13. Academic achievement, your intellectual promise, those geeky things, right? How well are you set up to handle intellectual academic work? But they're also going to be talking about things like your maturity, your motivation, your integrity. Remember Santa Claus, naughty or nice? Teachers know about this, right? So they're going to rate you on the same scale. Below average, average, good, very good, excellent, outstanding, one of the best in my career, which doesn't get checked very often. So you want the teacher to be able to think about you in all of these different dimensions and hopefully give you a very high rating in each and every one of them. So now that we know how the letter of recommendation is presented to schools, how do you actually ask for the letter of recommendation? Well, the first thing is you should ask your teacher in person, not by email, not by Facebook, not by Instagram, not by Snapchat. No. You're going to ask in person. You need to ask in person when the teacher is calm, when the teacher is relaxed, not when the teacher is running between classes during passing period. You should not ask them just as they're packing up all their stuff, running off to the next class. You should ask the teacher during office hours, before school, after school. Make sure that it's a comfortable time when you have some time to actually have a conversation. You need to present the reasons for your request. You need to tell the teacher why you are choosing that teacher for the recommendation. And generally that's going to be something to the effect that, I really like your class. I've really enjoyed being your student. I wonder if you would be willing to write me a recommendation for college. That's a nice way to say it, right? I like you. Would you do something nice for me? That's the gist. If you really want to make it easy for the teacher, and who doesn't, because teachers are overworked, underpaid, and really kind of harassed. And many teachers are writing literally dozens of college recommendations every single year. So be that student who's really nice and makes it easy for your teacher. The way you can do this is to develop a file. It could be an electronic file, it could be a paper file, but somehow you're going to pass along a bunch of information about yourself that will help the teacher with the recommendation. The first thing is to give the teacher a list of the schools that you plan to apply to and the reason why those schools are on your list. So you're describing for the teacher what is the destination that you hope to arrive at, what kind of education are you seeking, so that the teacher can speak to your goals. So if the teacher knows you're planning to be an engineer and they are an English teacher, they can help you in crafting the letter that will support that goal. On the other hand, if you're thinking that you want to be an actor and you're getting a recommendation from your chemistry teacher, Your chemistry teacher can talk about you in the academic context in a way that will help you achieve your goal. So tell them what you want, what you're trying to achieve, and let them help you reach that objective. Something else you should try to give them is the reasons why you have chosen them, and to share with the teacher some of those things that you've really enjoyed in the class. This gives the teacher an anecdote, an example, something that they can share with the admissions office to illustrate your motivation, your integrity, your stick-to-itiveness, your competence in the classroom. So give them examples of things that you've really enjoyed. So if it's a particular project that you really enjoyed, maybe you found it really difficult, but tell them, I learned a lot through this project, and this was what it was like for me as a student to do this. Or I found this unit in this class to be particularly fascinating or difficult or rewarding or puzzling or something, that you're sharing with them that you a little bit more information about how you felt as a student going through that teacher's classroom. Oftentimes a high school will ask students to complete a questionnaire of some sort before they can even ask teachers for the recommendations, or certainly before they can start applying to college. So do that questionnaire and do it well. This is again an opportunity for you to share information with your teacher to help them write a great recommendation on your behalf. So don't just write one-word answers and, blow it off. This is something that's really important to help your teachers say things that are just awesome about you. So take the time, it's worth it. Similarly, parents, if you are asked by the school or given an opportunity by the school to fill out a questionnaire of some sort in support of your students' recommendation letters, well then you should do it. I'll say that sentence again. Similarly, parents, if you are asked to fill out a questionnaire or survey of some sort in support of your students' letters of recommendation, you should definitely do it, and you should spend the time to make sure it's awesome. Give examples, give anecdotes, help the teacher to understand your student from your perspective. That can be very helpful, and often a teacher will pull information right out of that survey and stick it right into the letter of recommendation. Do not, however, for the teachers, give an extended list of your extracurricular activities. Presumably, if you have a relationship with the teacher knows that you are on the football team, or you are the star of the school play, or that you are one of the most award-winning artists in the class. So that may come out, and it's perfectly okay for the teacher to know those things about you and know you in those contexts. But you are really trying to get the teacher to focus on your academic abilities. If they spend half of the letter talking about the touchdown pass that you threw or caught, then you're missing out the opportunity to focus on the student. And that is what the admissions office wants to know about. So again, focus on the academics, try to help the teacher stay focused on those things. You have some responsibilities for understanding how your letters of recommendation are transmitted to the colleges and universities. Generally speaking, in this day and age, it's all done electronically. And there are several different platforms that colleges use, like Naviance, Parchment, there's some others, to transmit your recommendations. The recommendations could also be transmitted directly from the Common Application, the Coalition Application, and many other application platforms. However, different schools do this differently. So it is really important for you to understand exactly how this happens at your school, and that you follow instructions from your school. If they are giving a college information night, they will be explaining that. If they send out a student packet about how to apply to college, they will be explaining this procedure. If you go to your junior or senior counseling meeting with your counselor, they will explain this to you. You need to make sure you're paying attention, because you need to know how this works, because you are responsible for ensuring that the letter of recommendation gets from your teacher to the college and university. You need to make sure that happens. Obviously, the teacher has to write it. If this teacher said that he or she is going to write it, they got to do it. And the people in the counseling office have to push all the right technological buttons to make it happen. But if things get lost in the shuffle, it's your responsibility. You need to know how this works, and you need to stay on top of the process. And speaking of being aware of details, know the deadlines. Some high schools will have deadlines related to letters of recommendations, and you need to meet those deadlines. You also need to waive your right to see your letter of recommendation. Now, what does this mean? By law in the United States, everyone has free access to all of their educational records. This is a law called FERPA, and you don't need to know what it means, but basically, by law, you have access to all your academic records forever. However, you want your teacher to speak freely and confidentially with the people in the admissions office. You want them to feel comfortable sharing the truth. If your letter is not confidential, then the people who are reading it in the admissions office might think, maybe you bribed the teacher with too many cookies. Maybe there's some sort of shady dealing going on here. No, you don't want that. You want it to be an honest letter full of integrity, and so therefore you are going to waive your right under U.S. law to see your recommendation ever. This makes the letter confidential, and it gives the college admissions people a much higher degree of confidence that what the teachers are saying in the letter is actually true. So when you are asked to check that box to waive my right to access to my recommendation letters, you say, yep, I waive my right, because you want your teachers, your school officials to be able to talk openly and honestly about your academic and other records with people in the university admissions offices. Waive your rights. So there you have it. Now what's your action plan? First thing is, you got to know the procedures of how your high school sends your recommendations to the colleges. You need to figure out who is going to write your letters of recommendation. We have put together a little worksheet where you can start to think about that, and you can start to think about what are the teachers going to say. Not only are you compiling the names and addresses and phone numbers of your recommenders, but you're also thinking about, what would I anticipate that my French teacher would say about me? What would my science teacher say about me, generally speaking? You can imagine, you can put yourself in the shoes of that teacher. You're in that class every single day. You kind of know what's going on. So think about that and think it through. Make sure that you're following up with your teachers about their letters. If they've agreed to write it for you, you need to follow up. You need to make sure they know what the deadline is for you, and you need to make sure that as the deadline approaches that you are reminding them nicely, in a very friendly way, that you need your letter of recommendation to be finished. And if they're late for some reason, you definitely want to get on their case. Or maybe even have your counselor or somebody else in the school get on their case. Not mom and dad. Not mom and dad. Get somebody else in school to help push it along. Finally, write thank you notes. Thank you notes are really great. As soon as you send in all your applications, send a nice little note to your teacher and say, thank you so much for helping me get all this done. It's all done. All my applications are in. I'm feeling so much better. I'm really excited. When you get letters of acceptance, go and share the good news with your teachers. They love to hear this. They wanted to help you. They've offered to help you. Thank them. Thank them for the help. And then finally, when you're graduating from high school and you're off to college, send them another note. These teachers especially, the ones who wrote your recommendations, were instrumental in getting you into the college where you will now be going. Send them a note. And if you really want to be the awesome student, when you get to college, when you're a sophomore, when you graduate from college, send that teacher a note of thanks. There is nothing, I tell you, nothing that a teacher likes more than to hear from a student several years after they have graduated, and to know that you made a difference. And I'm telling you, as a teacher, that is awesome. So if you feel that way and that you know that one of your teachers has made a very special contribution to your life, thank them. It's the right thing to do, and you will make that teacher's day, week, month, year. Do it. It's totally worth it. So there you have it, letters of recommendation, one of the most important aspects of the college admissions process, in the bag. So get to work, get those great letters of recommendation, and I will see you on the next video.